Hello everyone, it's Tim here, again doing a backyard garden tour. I am located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We have just entered September and it is, believe it or not, already that time of year where I am thinking about next year's garden. Kind of doing a little evaluating, seeing what worked for me and maybe what didn't work this year. And just thinking about the future and what this garden's going to look like next year. Um, as I was doing that, and as I was, you know, combing the internet for plants and looking at catalogs, I realized that this entire garden, which is pretty big for a city garden, um, this entire garden did not cost me anything this year because all of these plants I either had saved them, brought them inside over the winter, they grew from seeds, or they are bulbs, or they just simply survived because this winter was pretty mild. Um, so yeah, let me there of course is an exception or two where I did buy a few plants, but for the most part, this is just all from all of those things that I just talked about. um, so let's get started here. Let's go around and let me just explain how it is that I have this plant currently and how I didn't have to pay for it really. Um, so one of the ways that I preserve plants is to just simply bring them in over the winter. Um, I don't have a lot of space, so I can't do that with too many plants, but there are a couple key plants that I just bring them in and they seem to survive okay. Um, so this plant back here, this lantana, which is blooming very nicely right now, it's a very woody plant. In certain zones, it's actually considered a perennial, so it may actually survive a mild winter, but I just bring it in every year um, just because I don't want to chance it. Um, so this spike right here, this Vinca spike, this lived outside all year over the winter, and it just made it, I think, because of how mild the winter was. The plant around the Vinca here, these geraniums, I just brought those in and put them in the windowsill, and they seem to survive okay. Those are, I think, on their third year. Um, so when you bring these plants in, I'm not gonna lie, they don't look great by the end of winter. They're looking, obviously there's no flowers, or rather, most of the leaves have fallen off. Um, but once you bring them out in the springtime, they kind of perk back up, and this is this is what we have right now, looking pretty good. Um, Another plant that I bring in is the silver mist. There are two of those, um, and looking quite good. So there is one or two other plants that I bring in, and I'll talk about them when I get to the other side where they're located. So that is one way that I have created this garden without really making any purchases this year. Um, this black petunia is one of the few plants that I did buy this year. I just think it's amazing. I love the fact that it's black. Um, it's unusual. So I did to get that plant. Let's see. Moving on here. So the other way that these plants have come back or grown is just simply by reseeding themselves. So these coleus, these guys right here, they get flowers. You can see just the beginnings of some flowers right there. And we'll move on over to this guy here who has a very big flower on it. So what happens is they get these flowers after they're done blooming. You can see these in these brown areas. Oh, there's one. This little black dot is the seed, and basically they just drop their seeds all over the place, and you're gonna have them everywhere. I actually have to pull some out every year just so it's not completely overwhelmed by them. The other plant that reseeds pretty easily are these coxcombs. Again, kind of spend a good amount of time having to pull them out because there's just too many of them. The seeds look very similar. They're little black dots that you can barely see. And if you look on this plant right here, you can see the little seeds are ready to fall out. And you're gonna have them everywhere. But if you have a big space that needs to be filled in and you don't want to have to buy a lot of plants, these plants that reseed are great for those types of areas. Another great reseeding plant would be a marigold. There is one right here. It has not bloomed yet, and I'm kind of surprised it's in there because I tried to pull out as many of those as I could. In previous years, the marigolds were the predominant reseeding plant, and this year I'm going with the coxcombs instead. Another reseeding plant which fills in spaces very nicely, low maintenance, is a zinnia. So that's this guy right here. Very beautiful, blooms constantly. The only real drawback I'd say is that they do get very tall, they get top heavy, and if there's a strong rain or wind, they will kind of fall over. So this guy right here, I don't know if you can follow my finger, the stem is actually pretty much horizontal because it fell over, and then these pieces are growing upright. So that's one drawback, but still very beautiful, low maintenance, reseeds very easily. Just so we can finish talking about plants that I have brought inside. Right down here, this is a Persian shield. This is the second year for this guy. Wintered over relatively nicely in the window in our apartment. And we also have this other purple plant right here, the Purple Heart. Pretty easy to winter over too. Now, most of these plants are relatively inexpensive, so some people are probably thinking, why bother? It's completely up to you. It's more of like a challenge, or it's just fun for me to try to save these plants and to be able to say, oh, this one is 2 or 3 years old and it just keeps coming back. So it's not necessarily I'm saving money, it's just kind of fun for me to do this. So I think that covers all of the plants that I bring in. Like I said, we don't really have a lot of space, so it's only a few plants that I bring in. Going over the plants that reseed easily. So the other plants, or the other option of making this this garden this year without really having to go to garden centers. Again, the pandemic makes me uncomfortable, and I don't really want to be around a lot of people, so it just worked out great this year that all of this was able to happen without me having to go somewhere. So these elephant ears, these guys right here with the huge leaves, they are everywhere. And also, I'm gonna look down here, these caladiums, they're actually related. those are bulbs. So fall, I'm just going to dig those out and bring them inside, save the bulb. They will not survive if you leave them outside. If it frosts, they will die. So you just have to dig them out and bring them in. They go into a dormant stage, and then you can bring them out again in the spring after the frost has finished. But actually all of the elephant ears are in their second year for me having them, and they're quite gigantic, which I'm fine with. There is another elephant ear right over here, which is the first year that I've had this particular variety. It's gigantic, but it's very nice. I think I am in the planning stages. I'm already looking for a few more varieties of elephant ears, just because I think I mentioned before in my last video, I just really like gardens that look like the jungle, and I think elephant ears really help that to happen. Stepping through the plants here. Another great way to kind of I guess fill in holes in your garden is to, if you know you're looking for ways to not be spending lots of money or going to the garden centers right now, is to just bring your houseplants outside. This philodendron is looking amazing. I think when I brought it out it had like 3 leaves, and now, as you can see, I think we're up to maybe 7. So it's great to bring out the house plants. Really fills in the spaces, make it look nice, and also the plants themselves really enjoy it. They get really healthy, very large. So it's a win-win. Got the angel wing back here, and the croton, and various ferns, and a spider plant back there. There is one more house plant that I just want to show briefly, just because it looks so nice right now. An Epixia. It's loving the outside weather right now, and it is blooming. So talked about, and here's the caladium again. This is again, it's another bulb that you just dig out in the fall and you bring inside and then replant them. So I'm just reusing these bulbs over again. So we've talked about plants that reseed, plants that I bring inside, bulbs, and also I just happen to have some perennials. I think they're mostly these, let me spin around here, these hostas. These are all perennials. They just come back every year. Very low maintenance, easy to maintain. There's a couple other perennials which have died off right now. We had some brown-eyed Susans. They just come back every year. There's some lamb's ear down here at my feet. So any perennial is great if you're not looking to have to replant every year. So I mentioned it was also a very mild winter, which kind of helped me out in a few different ways of not having to plant. So here's an example. It honestly looks like flat leaf parsley, but it is a plant called a columbine. It's not doing anything right now, but in the springtime it really gets these amazing, beautiful flowers. And this particular plant has just survived the winter just because it was mild. And also this tree right here, of course, will drop all of its leaves. And what it does is it just kind of creates this nice blanket and protects the plants from the winter weather. A lot of people will pick up their leaves, I don't know, just to make it, I guess, their property look nicer. I just let everything go and wait until the spring to do all of the cleanup, because I feel like those leaves really add an extra layer of protection. So the columbine plant, which I'll show you in the springtime when it's blooming, usually is another plant that will reseed itself. But again, because of the mild winter, it just survived. I'm gonna look underneath here. This plant with the very long name, which is escaping me right now, that also wintered over underneath a layer of leaves, and I'm very, very surprised by that. That plant has a very soft, very, what I'm going to say, watery stem, which is easy to freeze, so kind of shocked that it made it. It's kind of like when you break it, feels like celery in a way, so kind of surprised by that. So I think that is everything. You may have noticed, going back to the actual plants that I did buy, maybe you noticed that there are some impatiens sprinkled around. I did buy 1 pack of impatiens. So once spring happens, maybe some of these plants that, if you brought them inside, so the Purple Heart is one that I'm thinking of. I'm also thinking of the geraniums and this lantana. There's actually a lot of plants that you can do this with. If you have one solid plant, you can actually propagate it, trim it back, and grow new ones from cuttings. Now, I have this root hormone powder, which is amazing. All you have to do is trim or cut a plant off, dip it in this powder, and stick it in the ground, and it's just going to root itself. I think for best results for doing the root hormone, it's good if it's probably July, August, when it's the warmest outside. So if it's really warm temperatures, and if you make sure to constantly water it, things should just pretty much reroot themselves very easily. I don't think I mentioned, I mentioned plants that kind of reseed on themselves, but you also have the option to start seeds inside. Sorry, it's very, very loud in downtown Philadelphia. Lots of music and cars and things happening in the background. So this is a hyacinth bean vine plant. You can see all of these beans here. It does get flowers, which I'm going to point to at the top. After the flowers die, it produces these beans, which are frankly just as nice as the flowers themselves. But the beans have seeds inside, and that's how you can grow new ones. This plant is very easy to grow from seed, so I highly recommend the hyacinth bean vine. I'm going to spin around here real quick. There is one on the window which is not looking great, but you can see these brown pods are actually pods that have dried, and that's what you want. You want to leave them on the vine until the pods turn brown, and then inside the pods you're going to have these little seeds, and they grow quite easily and quite quickly. You can just put them in the ground, or you can start them ahead of time in early spring indoors. Alright, I think that is everything. Thank you for watching, and hopefully I will do another video soon where I dig these elephant ears out and get ready to bring them in for the winter. Alright, thanks for watching.